Your story is yours. It is uniquely yours. You are the only person in this whole entire world that has your story, your unique blend of background, expertise, experience, exposure, personality, strengths. You're the only person. So when it comes to bringing your story to the world, know that you have something unique to share, and that story can help you to connect with certain people, to help other people, to open doors to opportunities if you're willing to own it. Welcome to the Career Changemaker podcast, where we focus on owning your career journey and making impact through the work that you do. Whether you're looking to pivot, transition into leadership, or reimagine your career completely, this podcast is for you. We'll unpack career development strategies, leadership insights, and the mindset shifts needed to thrive in your career. Being a career changemaker means taking control and shaping your professional path with intention. I'm your host, lawyer turned career and leadership development specialist, Janine Esbrand. So if you're ready for candid conversations that are going to help you grow, keep listening. Hello, and welcome to the show. Today's a special one because we are wrapping up this season of the podcast. We've been leaning into topics all related to owning your career and your career trajectory. So we started the season with me sharing a bit about my reinvention journey and some shifts that I've been making in my life and my business. And then along the way, we've covered various topics like owning your value, overcoming burnout, leadership, and we've had some awesome guests. So we had Bukola Bayo Yusuf in episode 265, who talked about that can drive your career forward. We had Dr. Anika Davis in episode 267, who talked about authentic leadership. And most recently, we had Julian Roberts, who talked about how to be more resilient. And that was in last week's episode. So if you haven't listened to that, go and check it out. It was so good. So many gems have been dropped from the guests and from the other episodes that I shared over the course of this season. So if you missed any episodes, go back and listen again. We started this season at episode 262. So scroll back in your podcast player and listen to some of the previous episodes if you have missed them. There's a lot of wisdom in there waiting for you. Out this season, I want to talk about a really important aspect of taking ownership of your career, and that is owning your story. Your story is yours. It is uniquely yours. You are the only person in this whole entire world that has your story, your unique blend of background, expertise, experience, exposure, personality, strengths. You're the only person. So when it comes to bringing your story to the world, know that you have something unique to share, and that story can help you to connect with certain people, to help other people, to open doors to opportunities if you're willing to own it. Even if you've grown up in a house with a sibling or multiple siblings, you've still had a different experience. I was listening to something recently and they broke it down so nicely, and I never thought about it in this way. When people say, I have two kids and they grew up in exactly the same house and they turned out different. One, yes, they're going to turn out different because they're different people. But two, even if you've grown up in the same house, your experience is going to be different because your parents are a different age when they have the different siblings, right? So if you are somebody who has your first child at, say, age 30, like I was, and then your second child at age 32 or 33, you're a different person. You're a different person, not only because time has passed, but also life experience. How I parented my son when I only had one child to worry about, very different to how I parented my daughter because I had two children at that point. I want you to really think about how can you lean into the uniqueness of your experience when we're considering navigating your way through your career and your career choices. In the context of career ownership, storytelling can be incredibly powerful. Stories are the most impactful way that human beings relate to one another. Think about it. What else can evoke such strong emotions like hope, joy, anger, sadness, or despair? If you're anything like me, I'm a sucker for a rom-com. I'm a sucker for a sad movie. I can just be watching this story unfold, whether it's true or it's not. watching the story unfold and understanding where people are and being able to relate emotionally to what's going on before my eyes can bring me to tears. And you could be reading a book and that could happen, or you could hear a news story and be really angry about what you've just heard. Stories and us hearing stories about other people and having the ability to empathize and put ourselves in other people's shoes can evoke emotion. Now that can be used for good, that could be used for bad, but like when we're thinking about your career and what it is you're trying to achieve, you can be strategic and intentional about how you share your story. All storytellers, if something happens to you on your way home, or you have an update that you want to share with a friend about a situation or with a spouse, know that you're a storyteller. You are a storyteller. You naturally tell stories, but we overlook how this natural ability can unlock so many opportunities for us in our careers or our businesses. So when it comes to your career journey, think about the fact that this is really a story with various checkpoints along the way. You've been on a journey to this point, and your journey continues to unfold each and every day that you show up to work and continue to pursue your career, whatever way that looks. But not every point in your journey is relevant for every situation. So your job is to really identify which aspects of your story demonstrate what you want your audience to know and resonate with. I've had so many instances where I've had conversations with incredible women who are just glossing over such interesting, awesome aspects of their stories. And the reason they just gloss over it is because they don't necessarily see how impactful that aspect of their journey and their story is until somebody else external highlights it. So couple examples that always stick in my mind, even though I worked with these clients years ago. One is working with a high-end florist. She was at the point in her business where she felt like she wanted to take a step back, and she was thinking about taking a role for a while. She just casually mentioned that she had done flowers for Paris Fashion Week and that she had done the flowers for Alexander McQueen's funeral. And I was like, hold on, you did what now? Pause. And she was just ready to go on to the next thing. And I had to slow her down and say to her, look, this is not just a throwaway comment or description of something that you've done. This is a specific checkpoint in your journey that you want to emphasize. And the reason being is, if you are a candidate and you are going for an opportunity, or you are putting yourself out there, put yourself in the ring for something, and you have experience that stands out, not many other people are going to have, that is experience you want to shout about. The fact that she was hired to do Paris Fashion Week or to do such a high profile person's highlights her ability, right? It highlights her technical ability, because had she not been good, she wouldn't have been hired for those jobs. So just by sharing that aspect of her journey, it immediately shifted my perspective around who I was dealing with. I realized that, oh, it's not just any florist. You're really good at what you do, just by her telling me that story, rather than her just saying, you know, I'm a great florist and I've spent many years doing this. She could have said all that, but it wouldn't have had the same impact as me knowing the types of jobs she worked on had. That's one example. Another example is when I worked with a finance professional who was looking at making a career transition and really trying to unpack her story and which aspects she should mention. And one of the questions I had asked to her and the rest of the group that I was working with at the time was, tell me something interesting about you that people probably wouldn't know. And the thing that she shared was that she was a former professional hockey player. I was like, really? Because when I see her and I see her CV and I see what it is that she's done and the work that she's doing in finance, there is no way I would have guessed that she would have been a hockey player professionally previously. And the fact that she was a professional athlete immediately told me that there's a level of discipline and commitment that she has that not everybody has. Because if you are going to compete at that high level, you have to have a level of commitment. That's a quality that any team would value. So again, just by saying I was a former professional hockey player, you are saying something about who you are and how you show up, without saying I'm a committed and diligent person. So sometimes we can go all in trying to convince people of what we've done and who we are. We can try and tell them all day long, I've done this, I've done that, I've done that, when actually one very impactful story that resonates with people would be way more effective. And the thing about these stories is I worked with these clients years ago, 2, 3, 5 years ago, and I remember these stories, and I will always remember these stories because of how they made me feel when they told me the stories. You're willing to dig into your stories, into your archives, to really bring out some interesting, thought-provoking aspects of your journey, you'll find that it will be so much easier for you to stand out and be memorable and be known and recognized for what it is that you do and what you bring to the table. Your story doesn't necessarily have to relate to exactly what it is you do now, but the stories that you share, experiences that you've had, resilience that has been built, exposure that you've had that has led to certain skill sets that have been developed, so you can be strategic about connecting your past experiences to current opportunities. A friend of mine was recently preparing for an interview for a leadership position, and she was talking to me about how she should be showing up and what types of questions they might ask her. I was sharing some insight with her and started asking her some questions about her previous experience. And she realized from our conversation that she had previously been in charge of implementing a massive legislation update in the past when GDPR first came in. And going into this role, there is an imminent update to legislation that she would be working on. And she was too focused on, I need to go through the job spec and I need to think about how I can demonstrate these specific things. But she wasn't taking a step back to think about high level what she had done. It wasn't exactly the same as what is happening now, but there were so many parallels between what she'd done in the past and what she would be tasked to do going forward, that her sharing that story can really paint a picture in the minds of the hiring manager as to what she's capable of. And so she was able to lean into that and talk more about that, and she ended up landing the role. Sometimes I appreciate that as I am breaking this down and I'm sharing it with you, it's like, oh yeah, that's obvious. Oh yeah, that makes so much sense. But sometimes when you're in it and it's your story and you're close to it, it's really hard for you to see where the value is. And that's why working with a coach is so powerful, because you can have someone else say to you, look, do you realize or do you recognize how awesome this is or how valuable this is and why this is valuable in the context of what it is that you're doing? And this is one of the things I really love to do with clients when I am helping people to really align who they are, how they show up, what their strengths are, what their skill sets are to the work that they do so that they can drive impact. Their story is such a big part of that. I love doing that part, and I have a knack for connecting the dots. The way that my brain is wired, I find it really easy to pull information from different places and then pull it together and be like, this is what this represents and this is how you can talk about it. Let's talk about building your story bank. When it comes to your story, the first thing that you want to do is let's talk about building your story bank, because if you are in your 30s, your 40s, your 50s, you have years and years and years and years of life experience, lived experience, so many stories in the bank. So not every story is going to be relevant. So what you want to be thinking about is, who is it that I'm trying to reach? What do you want them to know about you? What do you want them to feel when they hear your story? What is the purpose of you sharing this story? What's the goal that you have? And that will help you to choose the most relevant stories and tailor your stories to the audience and then the purpose for which you're sharing the story. So let me give you a few examples from my personal experience. So I am a speaker, I am a coach, I am a trainer, I am a podcaster, I am a mum, I'm a wife, all the hats. But if I am preparing for, say, a speech and I'm going to be on stage, the stories that I choose are going to be different from the types of stories that I draw on when I'm in a coaching situation or a training situation. So if I was preparing a speech and I wanted to really share an impactful speech, and part of that was highlighting why I'm so passionate about not wasting time and making sure that the time that you spend is time well spent and that you're not doing work that is just taking up time and not allowing you to really fulfill your potential. If I wanted to share with my audience why this is so important to me, then I might share the story of losing my first boyfriend in a car accident when I was 17 years old, and how that really shaped my view on time and the shortness of life. Whereas if I was focusing on marketing for my coaching programs, I might highlight how a client of mine got promoted to director level and secured a multi-5-figure salary increase using the strategies that we worked on together. So I'm thinking about what is the impact I'm trying to create and what's the reason why I want to share this story to help me to determine which story that I share. So for you, I want you to start thinking about creating your story bank. The easiest way to do this is for you to draw a timeline, and along that timeline, just plot your key milestones and highlights that come to mind for you. So you plot your key milestones and highlights on the timeline, and then you're able to fill in the gaps. So I might say in 2007, I finished university and I went to New York for a year. And then in 2009, I went to law school. Then 2010, I did my training contract. And then 2011, I went on my mission trip to East Africa. And then in 2013, I moved to a different town. And in 2015, I had my son. In 2016, I was at a crossroads and I decided that I didn't want to continue my job as a corporate lawyer, and so on and so on and so on. Right? There's various points in the story, which we can go into another time. But the point is, I am plotting what are key milestones in terms of my career journey. And then I can go back and fill in the gaps and say, well, were there any? And then I can go back and fill in the gaps and say, well, were there any key things that would be interesting to share for this audience in between those times, or major lessons learned, or big clients that I worked with, or big events that have happened, or memorable events. It always has to be big. So that's the easiest way. It's like if you start with time markers, then your memory is able to go there, and then you're probably going to start to remember other things that are linked to those time markers. So my encouragement to you, my action for you for this episode is to plot your timeline and start to build your story bank. There's so much value. Our stories reflect our dynamic lives and they really draw people in. The more you share your story and you share the specifics of what you've been through or what you've been able to achieve or the impact that you've made, the more you'll attract the right types of people and the right types of opportunities. You're going to attract the people that resonate with who you are, how you show up, and how you approach the work that you do. And opportunities will open as a result. It's not easy though, right? It's not easy to be vulnerable. It's not easy to share. And as you're getting started, you don't have to go deep and you don't have to be vulnerable. You don't have to share stories that you don't want to share, but there are stories that speak to your expertise and speak to what you bring to the table that you can be sharing. So start there and just lean into the fact that your experience is yours. And it can be helpful to other people. It can be inspiring to other people. It can be encouraging to other people. It can resonate with other people. And so share it. I'd love to hear an aspect of your career story. So feel free to come on over to Career Changemaker Podcast on Instagram and send me a DM, share it with me, or you can send us a text using the link in your podcast app and share it with me there. Either way, I shared a bit of my story with you and I'd love to hear a bit about yours. Speaking of stories, I'm really excited about the next season of the show where we're going to be diving into some of the incredible stories of leaders within various organizations within different industries and different sizes who are going to share some of the lessons that they have learned on their leadership journeys that I think are going to be super, super impactful for you. Their lessons will inspire you to charge forward in your career and give you tools, tangible insights, mistakes to avoid, just the information that we don't always get. I think often we can put leaders on a pedestal, or we can see where they are now and respect them for what they've been able to achieve. We don't often get to go behind the scenes and understand not only the journey, but some of the decisions that they made along the way and the whys behind those decisions. So I'm looking forward to digging in the next season and bringing some awesome leaders to your to your ears through the podcast. So between now and when we get started in a few weeks for the next season, make sure you subscribe to the show so that you don't miss when we drop that first episode. And also revisit some of our earlier episodes. If you're missing us, if you've been tuning in week after week and you're missing the show, go back into the archives. We are on episode 271. That is a lot of episodes. So we've got so many gems, episodes that we recorded years ago that may well be relevant for you. So I recommend you scroll through the archives, look through the library on Spotify or Apple or, our website, and pick up what we've been putting down in terms of career strategy and advice and guidance for you. All right. Until next time, take care of yourself and keep moving towards your career goals. Speak to you soon. Bye.